this is session 2 of our countdown to Jesus, and I'm going to be looking at the prophecies of the Old Testament that were fulfilled in Jesus. And today I'm going to start with reading Isaiah 53, which is known as the suffering servant. Who has believed our message, and to whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? He grew up like a tender shoot, like a root out of dry ground. He had no beauty or majesty to attract us to him, nothing in his appearance that we should desire. He was despised and rejected by others, a man of suffering and familiar with pain. Like one from whom people hide their faces, he was despised, and we held him in low esteem. Surely he took our pain and bore our suffering. Yet we considered him punished by God, stricken by him and afflicted. But he was pierced for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. And the punishment that brought us peace was on him. And by his wounds we are healed. We all like sheep have gone astray. Each of us have turned to their own way. The Lord laid on him the iniquity of us all. He was oppressed and afflicted, yet he did not open his mouth. He was led like a lamb to the slaughter. As a sheep before its shearers is silent, so he did not open his mouth. By oppression and judgment he was taken away, and yet who of his generation protested? He was cut off from the land of the living. For the transgression of my people he was punished. He was assigned a grave with the wicked, with the rich in his death, though he had done no violence and there was no deceit in his mouth. Yet it was the Lord's will to crush him and cause him to suffer. And though the Lord makes his life an offering for sin, he will see his offspring and prolong his days. And the will of the Lord will prosper in his hand. After he has suffered, he will see the light of life and be satisfied. By his knowledge, my righteous servant will justify many, and he will bear their iniquities. This is a well-known chapter from Isaiah. Isaiah was writing to people after they returned from exile in Babylon, and he was writing about whom he saw as God's perfect servant. And of course we see the parallel to Jesus. But Isaiah didn't know that this was a prophetic revelation of a particular person called Jesus, but he saw what God's true servant would be like. He wasn't going to be someone noticed for his good looks. That was very much the Roman and Greek way of seeing people. If you were good looking, you were someone special. We've seen in the past week that he was rejected by many. And then in verse 8 it says, by oppression and judgment he was taken away. It was human desire for power and control that could not put up with the purity of God, and so they had to try to destroy his servant. Yet this servant was to take pay for our transgression. People thought that he was punished by God, when in reality he was taking on himself what we deserved. He was pierced for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. He was led like a lamb to the slaughter, and as a sheep before its shearers is silent, so he did not open his mouth. Jesus was indeed to be the true Passover lamb, slaughtered for us. And we know that he said nothing in his self-defence. He simply allowed the false testimony to be given, because he wasn't pleading his case. He was offering himself as a sacrifice. Jesus was indeed the perfect servant of God, foreseen in this prophecy of Isaiah.
Sinful men upon